may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
A blazing hot winter's afternoon, once again, the perfect place to be is in the local swimming pool, or in this case, Red Dam, that's actually Brown Dam. This is Safari Live.
Ready. Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome on this afternoon's Sunset Safari, where we've started off our afternoon with a hippopotamus once again. It's becoming a little bit of a theme, isn't it, Seb? Yes. My name is Jamie. This afternoon, Sebastian is on camera with me, and we are coming to you live from a place called Arathusa Private Game Reserve, which is in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. And for our new viewers, because this is a live safari, it means it's interactive. That's why I wear this, so that I can hear your questions coming through that you can send through on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So that's how you can get hold of us. It's the perfect Sunday afternoon, I feel, to go and look at a leopard, and we've got this brief opportunity, because we're out earlier than everybody else, to go and have a look, fingers crossed, at Shadow and Cub. Didn't work out so well this morning on the sunrise safari. We just didn't manage to get there in time. I'm hoping that this afternoon might be different. Who knows what we shall find. Seb and I went there after the sunrise safari this morning, and we still couldn't find her. She must have been lying in a thicket in the shade somewhere. We drove around for a bit. We did find was this gentleman. And it's an important reminder to all of us who are out on bushwalk each and every day. It was 9:30 in the morning, and it was warm this morning by that time. And he was wandering about quite far from Red Dam. He went on a little bit of a walk, didn't you, mister? Oh, he's giving us a roll. Belly up. So an important sort of lesson for us, or reminder, actually, not a lesson, that at this time of year, it's winter, the grass is dry, and the temperatures are cooler, which means things like hippopotamus are moving about more regularly later into the morning. They're typically nocturnal creatures, but you can't ever take that for granted. Right, I'm sorry, Mr. Hippo. You're lovely, but we can talk about you later. Goodbye. We shall leave him be and go off in search of the mysterious Shadow. And while we do that, I believe James is being very brave this afternoon. He's approaching Impala on foot.
Yes, my courage knows no bounds. In my sacrifice to give you a Sunday afternoon stroll worthy of people of your eminence, I am approaching Impala on foot. My name is James Henry. I'm currently sitting on a termite mound. In the same way that you can get hold of Jamie, you can get hold of me. Hashtag Safari Live is how you do that. Craig is on camera today. Hello, Craig. That was Craig shouting there. He said hello to you. And we're going to be wandering around here. I feel a sort of slow Sunday stroll coming on. I feel there are a lot of animals around quarantine area. We'll wander down to the pans in the immediate vicinity and see if some of the elephants perhaps don't come down to have a drink. Otherwise, we'll see what other little things we're able to find. And you might be able to see there that those impala are looking at us in slight alarm because we haven't moved for a while. We're not walking away. And the ram, well, he's just getting a little bit irritated by life because he's still in the middle of his rutting season and he doesn't feel like he's being taken very seriously. So every so often he lets out an enormous roar and a vicious snort. There, you may have just heard that. Now, I know the sound on bushwalk can often be a little bit less than... it can often be a little bit less than it is on the vehicles because we've only got the microphone in my hat and not a sort of ambient microphone. And so if you are struggling to hear some of the sounds, just feel free to ask and I will try and describe them, #SafariLive, or indeed imitate them. Perhaps that might be quite amusing. Anyway, I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday wherever you happen to find yourself in the world, and do not forget that although it is Sunday, we would like to hear from you during the course of the drive. Now, Colby, you want to know what the most dangerous animal I've ever seen on safari is. That is unquestionably, it could be one of 4 women from the FC, the Final Control. They are definitely the most dangerous creatures that we have over here. They are frightening, they are not to be trifled with, and I am now trifling with them, of course, by doing this, and so I will probably be beaten when I get home. And you can see my hand is now shaking and at the thought of them. They are very dangerous indeed. Other than them, though, other than the ladies of the FC, the most dangerous animal that you can meet out here would be something like a buffalo, I think. A buffalo on foot is I hate to use the term unpredictable because it's a term that I don't believe necessarily exists out here, but they are potentially more threatened than many other animals. If you get between a hippo and water, well, they will be the most dangerous animal to be out here. But just remember that nothing, to my mind anyway, is inherently dangerous. They see us as predators, the animals out here, and I keep banging on about this, but I think it's important that people understand this. They see us as predators, and that means that they will react to us as though we are predators. Now, it's exactly the same as you in a situation of conflict with another human being. With a bigger and more threatening human being, you will almost always move away if you can. And if you get cornered and you feel there's no other option, you're going to have to turn and fight. And that is how animals view things with us. So if we come around a corner and there's an elephant and it gets a big fright like this and it doesn't feel like it can move away, it's become so shocked, then it's going to come towards us to remove the threat. Same thing with a buffalo, same thing with a lion, same thing with a leopard. And so that's what you want to avoid. As long as you can avoid that, the chances of you being ironed by something big and nasty out here are small. They're always there. There are risks, and of course there is unpredictability in the wilderness. There always will be. But it is not inherently dangerous to be in the wild. And I think it's very important that people understand that. And it really makes me... It makes me sad when I see a whole lot of, this sort of sensationalizing of being in the wild in Africa. Death is around every termite mound and that sort of thing. That just makes me feel sad because it's such a beautiful wilderness, this. And yes, there's danger. That's what makes it so exciting. But it's potential danger. It is not inherently dangerous. Let's head across to Tristan with a terrifying, terrifying bird.
Well, terrifying is not something that I would use to describe a blacksmith lapwing, although when you get close to their nests and they dive bomb you and come rushing in, I suppose they can be a bit petrifying. I remember when I was a kid getting harassed by a few lapwings. Now, as James said, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I have Ferg, and we are out on a beautiful Sunday afternoon trying to see what we can find. And so we're checking all of the water holes, and we found these lapwings that were having a wonderful time. At one point they were inside the water and they were playing, and they were kind of bathing not one another, but each one was bathing, and there was water going in everywhere and lots of flapping about. But unfortunately they've now come out and sort of continued their grooming. Now, there was a log that was moving around here that almost looks very crocodile-like. You see it there, Ferg? There's our crocolog. Well, Taylor would be very happy to see this because she had a crocolog debate. Doesn't that look like a crocodile head? It looks just like a crocodile head, but it's actually a log that is moving around, I think, with a terrapin somewhere there as well. Yes, there's the terrapin's face. Or is it a terrapin itself? It is a terrapin. It's just got a very large shell. So there is our crocodile terrapin that is moving around. And yeah, exactly. Terralog, is that what you want to call it, Ferg? Crocoteralog. Okay, there we go. So it's a crocoteralog, and I wonder what it feeds on. Probably, maybe blacksmith lapwings. Maybe that's what it's going for, because it was slowly edging that way. And I suppose that would be quite a terrifying creature if you had to cross a crocodile with a terrapin. Not something I would want to come across, that's for sure. One, because terrapins smell very bad, and two, because crocodiles are just sneaky and not very pleasant at all. But alas, other than that, Treehouse Dam is quite quiet. I was hoping to find maybe some ellies or some buffalo that might be here, but it is all very, very, very sedate on this Sunday afternoon. Oh, there's a monkey. That's not very sedate. You see the monkey there, Ferg? On the other side of the dam. It's just come down to drink. Now, it's been a very, very long time since I've had a vervet monkey drinking at a pan. That's not a usual sight at all. They generally will be quite wary of water like this. I've seen monkeys drinking a lot at camps, out of the swimming pools and areas like that, and small little mud wallows, but very seldom will you see them at big sort of water pans like this. And the reason why is because of crocodiles. So, the lapwing's busy dive bombing a baby monkey. Why would you do that? Maybe there's some eggs close by and it's a bit worried about. You can hear there's lots of commotion with the lapwings, and there comes the baby monkey to join. And as I was saying, that it's quite dangerous for monkeys to be drinking in water like this. There could easily be a crocodile somewhere in here, which would definitely be a massive threat to a monkey. A crocodile would love to grab one of those. And so it's quite strange to actually see them drinking from such a large waterhole. Now, I wonder where the rest of the troop is. As far as I can see, I'm just scanning around. It's just these two that are here, but I would imagine there must be more of them. They're probably sitting in the shade of the trees somewhere. It is still very hot. Considering we are in late May, I would have expected the temperature to be a little bit lower by this time of the year, but it is quite warm this afternoon, and so I would expect the rest of them to be in a shady sort of area. There we go, quick drink. Careful of the lapwing. Here they come, here comes the lapwing. Oh, there we go, dive bombing. Now I wonder if it doesn't have eggs somewhere close by there, and it's worried that the monkeys are going to steal them. There we go, James was right, they're like pterodactyls. They dive bombing from above, and they're causing absolute terror if you're a monkey, that's for sure. And they have successfully scattered every single monkey out of sight. Well done, guys. Well, that's if they've got eggs, and they've done a very good job. Oh, there we go. That was a bit of action. It seems that our luck is continuing. We keep getting these amazing sightings this weekend of very random things. Yesterday we had our warthogs having a square off, and this afternoon we've got dive-bombing lapwings chasing monkeys. Now, I can honestly say that is an absolute first for me. I have never seen a lapwing dive-bombing a monkey. Baboons, yes, but not a vervet monkey. It's very, very strange, but very cool indeed. Now, I think from here we're going to try and check all the waterholes along as we go to the east. Our plan is to eventually get towards Cheetah Plains around sunset and admire that beautiful sunset that often happens there, and see if we can't find those two elusive cheetah brothers. I'm battling to talk this afternoon, maybe because it's Sunday. Oh, sorry Ferg, I only saw it at the last second, but there it is. Ferg spotted a beautiful crested barbet sitting on the tree. There we go. And the colours on this bird are amazing. The males in particular are a lot brighter, and they have these very sort of bright yellows and reds all over them. And of course, when I say that, it would go into the shade and make itself not as sort of visible, and for the colours to be a little bit more dreary. But hopefully it will hop down a little bit towards that sunlight, and we'll be able to actually get a glimpse of the beautiful colours that they do have. And you can see why it's called a crested barbet. Look at how that crest comes off the back of the head. So very aptly named indeed. Right. While we wait for our crested barbet to head into the sun, let's go across to James Henry, who's managed to find himself a couple little piglets.
Well, we had some. Unfortunately, oh, there we go. There they are. They're just a little bit nervous of us. You still see them there, Craig? So warthogs much more nervous than many of the other animals out here, and we only managed to get within about 100 meters of them or so. Probably even more than that. 120 or so meters. So we're a long way from them, but they've taken fright, and they've headed interestingly into the shade, where they're a lot more or a lot less visible than they would be in the sun, where they were grazing. And the other thing is, I think one of them specifically is quite nervous, got a bad limp on the right front foot. So there's some kind of issue there. Maybe she's injured. Let's try and move maybe a little bit around this way and see if we can't get a better look. We'll give you an idea here of how far away we are. Now the thing is, if you're approaching these animals, as I've said to you before, you've obviously got to try and behave as little like a predator as possible. So we were talking earlier about what makes it dangerous to be out here and the potential dangers and potentially dangerous animals. These are not potentially dangerous animals at this distance, nor in an environment like this. They're potentially extremely dangerous if you get them in their burrows by mistake. They'll come charging out and they can do quite a lot of damage. But here they're just going to increase the distance, they're just going to move away. And just about every single animal out here will seek to minimize any kind of conflict. Now our predator in our position would be ducking down, seeking cover behind a tree or behind a termite mound. It would not be walking in the open like this. And we've now managed to close the distance to the warthogs by about 25 meters or so, and we've got a much better view. And they're just not quite comfortable with us. And I think, you know, again, like with most animals out here, if we kept doing this, we would find that eventually they would completely habituate. And certainly warthogs are renowned for habituating quickly to human beings. They go into camps quite a lot, and you can domesticate a warthog quite successfully. So if you raise it from a piglet, it will be perfectly tame as an adult. I'm not sure how good they are as guard dogs. It'd be quite terrifying to have a 100-kilogram warthog boar as a guard pig. Don't you think, Craig? A guard pig. Now, I believe we had some questions about termite mounds. And we do have, well, any number of termite mounds. And as Tristan told you all yesterday, I am an absolute genius when it comes to tracking termite mounds. No one can do it like me. No one at all. I'm the greatest at it. Here they are. Here is a termite mound. I tracked it down myself. Now, Chantal, what questions have we about termite mounds? Richard, you say, what do they eat, I think? What do termites eat, and why do they build mounds to live in? Well, they build mounds to live in largely for the same reason that you build a house to live in. To keep the temperature the same, to insulate their bodies from the elements, and to keep the queen and the rest of the colony safe. That's why they build these mounds. Why some don't build mounds, I'm not sure. But in fact, most termite species don't build mounds. This is one species of termite. All the mounds that you see out here are built by the species of termite called Macrotermes natalensis. And Macrotermes natalensis builds these mounds, and underneath them they have, or sort of to the side of them, they've got fungus gardens that they tend, and they use to help them digest the plant matter that they gather and then they eat. Many termites do not build mounds at all. They live under the ground in colonies, and they use the natural insulation of the ground to sort of keep their mounds at the same temperature. These ones, they probably all maintain their mounds at around about 24 or 25 degrees Celsius or so, and that's a pretty optimum temperature if you're sort of a cold-blooded ectothermic animal. And they'll open up chimneys to cool things down and close those chimneys to warm things up. And the heat, of course, comes from the metabolic heat of the entire termite colony. But that's why they build them. It's largely for insulation and safety, of course. They really are quite hard. But you will find that aardvark or aardvark do a lot of digging into these things to get hold of the termites, and it's probably easier for them to get into these mounds than it is to get into the subterranean colonies that there are around the place. I'll try and find you some of those. So that's Macrotermes natalensis, or the fungus-growing termite, the large fungus-growing termite. And here's the different species, actually. This, I think, is the mound of Odontotermes, and although this looks like a mound, this is as tall as it will get, and they've got these chimneys into which things like dwarf mongoose and nasty things like black mambas will go. There we go. Can you see a black mamba down there, Craig? Craig is a snake wrangler, of course. He's not afraid of snakes, unlike me. Susie, you wonder why there are so many termite mounds in the bush if they only eat dead wood. They don't only eat dead wood. And interestingly, there are probably even more termites than you think there are. The combined mass of the termites in an area like this is greater than the combined mass of the large above-ground herbivores. So if you think of the rhino and the elephant and the buffalo and all 10 species of antelope that we get out here, the combined mass of the termites under the ground is greater than that of all those animals combined, which is quite something. So there are millions and billions of them around here. Every little piece of ground here has probably got a termite colony that uses it for eating. Now, what they do eat, yes, they eat dead wood. They don't have to eat a huge amount of it. They eat dead grass. Sometimes they eat living grass. Sometimes they'll clear up any kind of dry plant material. They'll take it down into the mound, process it, and grow it. At least grow fungus on it. And so it's any kind of dead vegetation. It's not just dead wood at all. And it is amazing, but can you imagine if you were to remove the termites from an area? Can you imagine the effect that it would have? How it would destroy the functioning of an ecosystem if you were to take out the termites from an area. Now we have the Great Migration. Unfortunately, Brent Leo Smith has been struggling with his signal, but thankfully the wildebeest have come down here in order to migrate. Wonderful. There they are. We're going to stand with them for a little while, and you're going to head across to an animal that has been confused with a buffalo, with a wildebeest before, but it is not in fact a wildebeest.
Well, yes, indeed, it could be confused with a wildebeest at times. Well, people do confuse it very often for a wildebeest, although it is far more terrifying and far more dangerous than the warthogs, the lapwings, or the wildebeest itself. It is a African buffalo or Cape buffalo, and it is just one by himself. He's a lonely fella, but he's found himself a nice little mud wallow for the afternoon, and it seems that's going to be the theme for the first hour or so of drive. It's still warm, and so everybody's having Sunday fun day in the mud. We're all kind of sitting in water. We had the lapwings playing, the monkeys that came down to drink, and now our buffalo also. Now, it's good to see a buffalo because I can't remember actually the last time we saw one or had one on the show. I think it was a while ago already, and so hopefully this will be the sort of start of many of them, should we say, coming back, which hopefully will then bring the Nkuhumas back into the area. But this is quite an old bull. You can see he's got a worn sort of facial area around the eyes, which is quite common on buffalo. You see it a lot. When they get a little bit older, it starts to get bigger and bigger. He's not a massively old individual because his ears are still in fairly good condition. They're not too tatty. But look at the amount of flies that are all over him. Isn't that amazing? All over his eyes and his face. It must be so uncomfortable to lie like that, and that's often why they go into mud like this. That sort of layer of mud will create a sort of layer between them and the actual biting flies. Those are all biting flies that are busy landing on him at the moment, and so that mud will just help keep those guys away and keep his sort of skin free of this irritation that is those biting flies. Now, I can tell you, biting flies are not a pleasant experience. They land on you and they leave this nasty little pain, and it's not very fun at all. But he is one sleepy boy. He's only perked up because we were here, and because I'm talking, you'll find his eyes will open every now and then, but they're kind of sagging closed from time to time, and you'll see the flies are congregating around the eye area because I don't know if you can see there's a bit of sort of moisture that's developing just underneath, and it's probably from looking into the sun. It's much like us. If we look into the sun, our eyes start to water a little bit, and those flies will be sequestering the moisture from where that eye is. So they're actually basically getting little bits of that moisture off, and so you'll find a lot of flies congregating around the eye area. Shame, boy, is that not comfortable at all? So, I didn't catch the name there, Chantal, if you can just repeat it for me. But you're wondering which is the sort of difference between... Geeky Beth, you're wondering what the difference is between the African buffalo and the American buffalo. Well, the Cape buffalo, it looks very, very different. So it's got these widespread horns that go outwards and around and almost kind of extend way past the ears, whereas your American buffalo will have a horn structure that doesn't go nearly as big as what the African buffalo does. The American buffalo will also be much bigger, much heavier set animal than what we see with the African buffalo. The African buffalo tends to have a more sort of uniform shape and doesn't have those high shoulders that you'll see on the American buffalo. And also, there's just no American buffalo in Africa, so you'll find those only occur in North America, whereas these guys are spread throughout Africa, but you will also not find them anywhere else. And so these guys would resemble more like a cow, if you want to call it that, whereas the American buffalo, it's got a completely different look, and like I say, much longer front legs and those big, thick, furry coats, whereas ours have got quite a thin fur. Now, what you will notice with these guys' horns as well, we were chatting about horns just now, is that he's got quite a lot of coloration on his horns. So you can see there's a bit of sort of oranges inside there and reds, and that's all actually from trees. It's not naturally in the horn itself. He's gone and rubbed up against varying trees, and the reason for that is, one is to provide color onto that horn itself, and it'll show contrast and size, and that will be intimidating to other males as well as attractive to females. But it also helps with getting bits of cambium on the horn. Now, cambium is basically a natural sort of retardant for a tree to keep out boring insects, and because they have a keratin sheath, the theory is that the horn boring moth that feeds off buffalo horns when they die are not very fond of that tannin, and so when it's rubbed on like that, the horn boring moth leaves this buffalo alone, and the horns stay nice and sort of whole, and they don't get any damage to them whatsoever. So it just helps in keeping the horns in good condition. Now you can see a couple of birds have just arrived, which has perked our buffalo up. Yes, the neighbors have arrived, and they are a noisy bunch, I'm sorry. And so our oxpeckers are here, and they're going to try and feed off all the parasites that are on this buffalo. And you'll find they'll probably drive him absolutely crazy, but they perform a vital function. One of those oxpeckers is going to be cleaning this buffalo and making sure that there's probably easily 1,000 less tick larvae on the buffalo itself. So it's going to be a very, very vital part of his sort of grooming process. And if he's lucky, in the muddy wallow that he's in, there might be a terrapin or two, and so the birds will clean above and the terrapins will clean below the water surface, and so he'll get an all-round sort of good cleaning and make sure that he's actually in good condition when he leaves the mud wallow. So it's like going to the car wash if you have a car, really. They come in and it's a cleaning service that is provided. So just unfortunate that they're quite a noisy bunch. And the problem is that they do go into his ears and up his nose, and that's why they kind of irritate. If they just stayed on the back and around the sort of sides of him, probably wouldn't cause nearly as much of an issue. And you can see there's a young one, so you notice it didn't have the red beak like the adult. So the young ones, when they're born, they have grey beaks, and now they've gone on to the other side, I think, to go and drink water. You'll often find oxpeckers will use the side of the animal to drink. It's just below where we can see, but they'll go down the side and then they drink the water from the animal itself. But an oxpecker always amazes me as to how agile they are on the actual animal. And you'll see that they move up and down quite easily, and that's because they've got a very different foot structure to what you see on a normal bird. So most of our passerines or perching birds will have 3 toes facing forward and 1 toe facing back. But these little oxpeckers, if you can see there, their toes are slightly different. They've got 2 forward and 2 back, and it almost acts like an X-shaped grappling hook. And so as they move, they're able to grip and go up and down and traverse the sides of this animal without gravity pulling them down. And you can see what I was saying about them going into the eyes. Both of them are busy feeding around the eyes and causing horrible discomfort, I would imagine. Right, now we've got our buffalo, and James has still got his wildebeest. So let's go across to him and see what the differences are.
We do still have our wildebeest, and the differences, of course, are manifold, which means many. And we've had a wonderful little scene here while you were watching the buffalo of the rest of the herd coming to join the first lot that you saw standing in the shade there. And I imagined to myself what they were saying to each other as they came up, deciding this was a good spot to be. And then suddenly some of them noticed us standing here in the shade, and I imagined the conversation that went on between them, going something like, "Go, you didn't tell us about them. What have they been doing? How long have they been there?" "No, they've been there for 10 minutes. They're okay. We see them often." "Yes, but they're people. They could be dangerous." "No, don't worry about them." And some of them are still going, oh, they're staring at us. There. You can't hear them, but they are alarming, despite the fact that they see us walk past here every single day. I don't know why they're so nervous of us. Let's just walk a little bit closer, see how much they will tolerate us, how desperately they want to stay in their shade over there. We'll just walk out into the sun where we're obvious. There we are. And it's only the adults that are alarming. The little ones aren't even looking at us. Now, funnily enough, as we've come out into the sun, which I suppose is even less cover than the shade was providing, they seem to be slightly less worried. But I suspect they've probably been down by the water for some time, and it's getting time now for them to have their sort of evening graze before they lie down and begin the evening, what's the word I'm going for? Evening rumination, where they'll re-chew all of their food that they're going to eat between now and sundown. They might wander back down towards the water for a little bit of a swim, and not a swim, for a bit of a drink later on. There, look, they're all starting to move in a beautiful migratory line. Do you know, you say they are the Henry herd, they love me. We can call them the Henry herd if you like. I don't think they love me, though. I think that is evidenced by the fact that they are now running away. And you know, I go running on quarantine clearing sometimes. I go round, there's a sort of nice track that runs around the side. And I have been along that track with the wildebeest standing here, and when I run down this way, they all run across to the other side. And then when I come round on the lap, they all come running back this way. And then on the second lap, they do exactly the same thing. And despite the fact that they must have seen me doing it, I don't know, 50 times, makes no difference. There is a distance beyond which they will not tolerate a human presence. No matter how much time I've spent running around here. And that's unlike the zebra, of course. The zebra of the McCurdy-Hurdy that Taylor habituated quite nicely, they let her get to within sort of 20 or 30 meters. Maybe that means that a zebra is slightly cleverer than a wildebeest. Or maybe it means that a zebra is slightly more stupid than a wildebeest. And Lucas, you say, why do the Sabi Sands wildebeest not migrate? Well, the question, Lucas, more is, why do any wildebeest migrate? And of course they migrate to water and to fresh grazing. In this place, in the Sabi Sands, there used to be a migration. It used to go, I mean, the Sabi Sands are small, right? The Sabi Sands is about the same size as the Mara Triangle, which is a portion of the Masai Mara, which in turn is about a fifth of the total Serengeti Mara ecosystem area. So, I mean, it's a small portion, that Mara Triangle. So wildebeest they move up and down that whole area within a day. The wildebeest migration that goes from southern Tanzania all the way up into the northern Masai Mara is a distance of some, what is it? It must be about, I should know this, about 300 kilometers or so, 300 or 400 kilometers. But it's quite a roundabout way. The wildebeest here never migrated in the Sabi Sands, but they used to migrate out of the Sabi Sands. And there are lovely accounts of this great big cloud of dust coming out of the south. And this is from places on the banks of the great Timbavati River, which is north of us. And that used to flow during the summer. It doesn't anymore, but it used to. And these wildebeest used to leave the grazing grounds of the Sand River and the Sabi River that they used to frequent in the winter, because those two rivers are perennial, and they would then migrate in huge numbers of up to sort of 20 or 30,000 up north into the Timbavati, and there were lovely reports of seeing this dust cloud coming, and then you knew the wildebeest were on their way, and they would settle for the summer north of here in the Timbavati, say about 100 kilometers or so of migration, and there they would spend the summer on the banks of the Timbavati River and the surrounds and drink water from the pans that formed there and from the river, which was an annual river at the time. Now it's dry, and so they don't go up there, and of course now there is artificial water. Oh dear, I think I've lost my earpiece. There's artificial water all over the Sabi Sands, which means that there is no need for them to migrate, and that's why they don't. Right, now Jamie Patterson has managed to find herself not quite shadowed just yet, but a bushbuck.
Not shadowed just yet. In fact, it seems as though shadow has melted into the shadows. But we do have this beautiful female bushbuck who is very, very close to where shadow was last seen. And this morning on the sunrise safari, I mentioned that we went to go and find shadow after the drive. And this morning, Seb and myself saw this little female with a male as well, walking straight towards where shadow was reported to have been seen. We didn't find shadow, and it looks as though neither did this female bushbuck. But where is her male companion? Not that I would ever wish death upon bushbuck. I love them. They're one of my favourite antelope. But I don't see the male. I was sort of hoping for shadow's sake she might have managed to nab one of them as they passed through. But the female looks okay, and the fact that she's still in this area I would have thought would count against the idea that shadow's munching on her male companion somewhere. A beautiful girl. Oh, they are beautiful. I know we always talk about the beauty of kudu and nyala, but there's something highly understated about and very graceful about a bushbuck. She's listening still. She keeps looking off in the direction of the drainage line. She's in a drainage line, true to James's jokes from the last few drives. Which is basically a dried up river system. Look at that. It's so sweet. Hello, yes, we see you. Do you know where Shadow is? Because Shadow's finished her Dacre kill. Leopard's finished it off. That was to be expected. Didn't expect it to last for all that long. A Dacre is a small antelope, but a bushbuck would be a far more substantial meal. Still looking. Sniffing. Shadow's scent is probably all around here. I just wish that we could find her. We want to do the exact opposite of what this bushbuck does, and that's to go and find this leopard. So while we continue on the search, let's go back across to Tristan and his very large bovid.
Well, yes, hopefully that bushbuck will find the leopard for you. That would be ideal, Jamie. That would make life a lot easier. But our buffalo is still taking it very easy and very chilled. He had shame. There was a bit of a dispute with all the oxpeckers and much noise was created. And our poor buffalo got very kind of upset by all of this. His head was shaking and he was sniffing the air. And I think he got a bit sort of confused by all the noise. But the oxpeckers have since departed. The kids have been taken home for being naughty. And now peace and quiet has resumed, bar us, I suppose. Ferg and I have made a bit of noise that he's been watching every now and then, but otherwise he's very relaxed. And I think he's going to be probably sitting there for much of the afternoon. I highly doubt he's going to move too far. At the end of the day, this is the perfect place for a buffalo to be. The shade is going to be on him for most of the afternoon, so it will be a perfect area. So, Francis, the buffalo, they can be in either. You're asking whether they roam alone or be in herds. So what you'll find is females generally in herd structures. Last year during the drought it was quite interesting because the females actually started to break apart and you'd find one or two females by themselves, which was really very weird. Generally though, a female will be in a grouping together, and those groups can be anywhere from 10 animals all the way to 2,000 in a herd together. And they'll generally have their young ones and they all move around in the same place, and then you'll go find the males that are born into those herds and they stay there until they become sort of sub-adult, and as they become into their adulthood they start to get a little bit lazy and kind of not really wanting to move as much as what the herd does, because remember, when a herd moves, if you've got 100 animals, they're busy squashing most of what they are walking on. So what they're not eating, they're trampling, and so they then have to keep moving all the time to find fresh, sustainable feeding areas as well as water. And so the males kind of get tired of this nomadic lifestyle, and they'll then drop off in areas where they feel like there's good habitat, so thicker areas where there's a sort of water source and good grazing, and they'll wait there until the next time a herd comes past, and then they can join for a few days and drop off somewhere else, and you'll find they're in and out quite a bit. And the males will then often be on on their own. It's quite common to find a male buffalo on his own. It's not ideal, though, for male buffalo to be on there, and they would rather prefer to be in small bachelor herds where they can then protect one another, because ultimately out here, the biggest sort of threat is lions, and the lions out here love buffalo, so you'll find that they'll go after any buffalo they can. And if the Nkuhuma Pride came here now, this is exactly what they would be looking for. A buffalo bull on his own, much easier to fight with one buffalo than it is to fight with 15 or 20 male buffalo together. So it's not easy for a male buffalo on his own, and that's why he'll try and seek sort of companionship with other males, but it's not always possible, and especially at the moment, because the buffalo numbers are so low after the drought around Djuma, and they will pick up as the bigger herds start to shift through, and we start to maybe see 1 or 2 herds coming in now. As we get into the winter months, we should start seeing them coming from the Manyaleti side, and once that happens, then a lot more male buffalo will be around, and we'll be able to find them. Now, Ferg has spotted some butterflies bouncing around in the background, so we've got Brawn and we've got Beauty in the same frame there. So, dear watcher, the buffalo do get stuck in the mud. In this kind of mud, not so much. This is very shallow, and it's not really deep enough for thick mud to develop. But what you'll find is in places where we have bigger pans, so like Gari Dam or Treehouse Dam, Twin Dams, those areas you'll often find when they dry, they get a big thick crust layer of mud, and buffalo often get stuck in there. And last year in the drought at Arathusa Dam, there was 3 buffalo that got stuck in there in a space of, I think, 4 days. So it does happen, and they do get stuck, but it's generally when we're having very dry times, and when there's a massive thick layer of mud and the buffalo are in a weakened state. Because when a buffalo is fit and healthy, like this one will be now after the summer, then you'll find that it's normally strong enough to be able to pull its body out. But when they get a little bit weaker and there's been a really thick layer of mud, then given that they've got such small hooves in relation to their body weight, they tend to sink right down, and it becomes very hard for them to get back out again. But I think our buffalo bull is probably not going to do too much more, so we're going to leave him there and carry on and try and see if we can't maybe find something else at one of the water holes. We're going to head down towards Twin Dams and see if there's maybe no sign of some elephants down there. I haven't heard anything. We're not too far from where Twin Dams is, so we probably would have heard elephants if they were splashing about, but let's go and check anyway just to make sure and see if there isn't anything. See them is very cool. I'm quite glad we've managed to find one. Hopefully, as I mentioned before, it will be a sign of things to come. Twin Dams, we're going to try and see if there aren't any ellies. James has found arguably the most beautiful antelope that we get in Djuma.
I think that Tristan is right. We have found it, although it is of now hiding, of course, behind a bush. It is that group of 7 Nyala that we began our little walking safari yesterday morning with. They came wandering across quarantine, and they're there. That's quite a nice view of them, just popping out now. And quite why they're so friendly with each other, I'm not sure. But the first one you saw has got his mantle up, his white mantle, so he's looking a little bit sort of nervous. Taka, you're just 4 years old, as always you are. One day you will be 5, of course. And you say, what animals leave skid marks in the dirt? You mean what animals sort of slide in the dirt? I think the animal that leaves the best skid marks in the dirt is a rhino. They walk along and they drag their feet like this. And so they leave really good skid marks. They're the ones that leave the best skid marks. There's our Nyala. Now, if you look at him, you might be able to see that his mantle is up, and I suspect that he is having some sort of conflict with one of the others in his group. It's unusual to find an enormous group of Nyala like this, so comfortably walking around with each other, simply because bulls, males in general out here, are not particularly friendly to each other. So let's keep going along here, and we'll see if we can't get a nice view of them. Just watch that log there, Craig, you're about to fall over. And still, I'm astounded, there's nothing come down to drink at the waterhole yet. It's a nice hot afternoon, it's probably about, I don't know, it must be pushing 80 degrees or so. There they are now, going up towards that very large termite mound and going just behind it. Let's go over this. Oh, no, let's not. There's a better view over there. And again, just not prepared to let us get to within more than or less than 100 meters of them. And just blending in with the spike thorn thicket there. Let's keep going around this way. I'm going to walk a little bit faster just to see if we can't get around. Mary, Mary, you say, what is rutting? Rutting, Mary, Mary, well, there are two ways you can interpret the term rutting. It has a colloquial human term, which we shan't discuss. But in this context, rutting means the fighting that males engage in during the season, during the mating season. So it's the fighting that the males, the fighting season, if you like, that the males engage in just prior to mating. And all sorts of animals do it. Deer do it. Birds don't do it, nor do bees. But all the antelope out here will have some form of rut, and it's normally a designated season during which they will have their big boxing matches with each other and try and show the females how very big and strong they are. We're just coming round the side of this termite mound here. This is really quite fun, actually. We've closed the distance without a few of them realizing to about half of what it was. There we go. Just through there. There, he's just spotted us. It's important now that we don't kind of just freeze, that we keep talking normally, keep behaving as we were behaving. And he shouldn't be too panicked. Yeah, he's not too panicked. He's pretty relaxed. He's not alarm calling at all at us. This is quite a good return so far. I think I've seen more mammals on this bushwalk than I have in my vehicle for the last 3 weeks. Dizzy, you're wondering about my scariest encounter with an animal. On foot. I don't know, you know, I always find it difficult to pick one. I guess it must have been, just about all of them would have been when I was a very young guide and I didn't understand the wilderness as well as I do now, and I'm not for one instant suggesting I understand it completely now. But, yeah, there were 1 or 2 incidents with a leopard. The first leopard charge I ever experienced was terrifying, although I don't actually, in hindsight, believe I was in any danger. Leopard came within sort of 2 feet of me, and I was carrying the rifle for the tracker, and I raised it up like this and loaded, thinking that leopard was coming for sure. And by the time I had loaded and brought the rifle up, the leopard was gone. I unloaded, you know, and got things ready and set. But I think for me the most terrifying thing about being on foot was being with guests, because you just don't know how they're going to react. And I remember once I was walking with a young couple, and it was misty and rainy, so it's difficult to hear, it's difficult to see what's going on. It was a game-rich area, and we stepped up out of a sort of drainage line. The tracker was in front, and he just happened to be looking left, and I looked right, and there was a lioness lying here. And she was fast asleep, and she didn't, you know, lions do sleep completely soundly. She didn't wake up when we came because of the wind. And I went like that, hoping, you know, she thankfully got up and just moved off. And I turned around, and mercifully the guests had stood still. But you hear terrible stories of guests that, despite being told don't run, that will just scarper, and then you really are going to be in trouble. So for me, it wasn't so, I haven't had experiences that really stick in my mind on foot that where I think, oh my goodness, I'm really lucky to have survived that. But I have had experiences where the reality of people's lives in my hands have made me really kind of think twice about walking around out here. Anyway, I often think that those stories are a little bit disappointing to people who ask them, because you would kind of expect to hear, well, I was standing and this elephant came and I threw a rock at him and I stood down the charge and he threw sand at me and, I made him back off eventually. And I just don't have many of those stories, so I'm sorry about that. Actually, I think we're going to give up with these Nyala, and we're going to have a look there at some hornbills, Craig, on the top of that dead tree there. Can you see them there? Handheld, super zoom. Hey, good job there. Beautiful little sighting of some hornbills waiting to see, like we are, what's going to come down to the water to drink. In fact, you know what? I can tell. I've got a story for you quickly. In fact, let's go across to Jamie and I'll save my little scary story for you when you come back.
I've been charged by an Inyala, It was a very scary moment, and actually it wasn't charging. Oh, the bird flew away. I didn't even realize. It was not actually charging me, it was charging my dog Lexi, who doesn't really want to chase them so much as she wants to play with them. And the male Inyala decided that it wasn't having any of it, and Lexi ran between my legs, being chased by this big male Inyala, and he stopped here, I would say, horns down, and I just stood there going, I don't quite know what to do. I was yelling at him and clapping, but they're so used to our presence. They were camp Inyala, they were used to us being around. Actually might qualify as one of my scariest charges. I think scariest, most dangerous one was perhaps the black rhino. No, it was definitely the black rhino. Elizabeth the Grumpy. Okay, well, we're following quite the pattern on these sunset safaris. First we do hippopotamus, then we search for leopard, and then we do dwarf mongoose. Unfortunately this time, we've got a shy group of dwarf mongoose. Come on, little ones. I can hear you. Squeaking and rustling. Okay, let's go see if we can find their bolt hole. And maybe we'll have more luck. I hear you. Can hear it shouting at me. Aha! I see you. There we go. On the fallen tree. Oh, of course it's hidden. Oh, Seb. Yeah. If I move now... it's gonna... I know, I see that. Oh, tragic. No shadow. A hidden dwarf mongoose. Dabboop. Oh. There we go.
Is that there?
Go left, right a little bit. No, you see, now it's behind some grass. There it is. That's it there. Believe it. There we go. That's it moving behind the grass. There we go. Phew. Relief. People are going to start thinking that I'm hallucinating mongoose. I suppose there are worse things to hallucinate. Had so many wonderful dwarf mongoose sightings recently. That's a really lovely shot. Look how weird their pupils are. They've got the strangest sort of horizontal, rectangular pupils. Now we've got the glint of the sun off its eye. But they're very peculiar pupils. So different. You see that? They're slits, but horizontal slits. I wonder why that is. I understand that why cat's eyes are the way that they are, but why are dwarf mongoose pupils horizontal and rectangular? I mean, that's something that I noticed years ago when I was observing mongoose when I was a teenager. Do you think it helps with the glare, maybe? Hey? I mean, we know that dark eyes help with glare, which is why cheetah eyes tend to be quite a lot darker than something like a leopard's eyes, for example. And welcome to Tato, who is 12 years old. Gosh, Tato, who is 12 years old. And Tato, you want to know, Carter. Thank you. Thanks, Chantal. Carter, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get your name wrong. Carter, you want to know whether or not mongoose are related to mice. Not really, Carter. They belong to a completely different family. So mice are part of the rodent family, and they're actually more closely related to something like a hare or a rabbit or even a porcupine, which is also a rodent. A porcupine, of course, the big rodent with the quills that wanders around. So a porcupine is a rodent. Mongoose are not. So they don't have those two front teeth, those large two front teeth that stick out. They've got that groove in the middle. Very, very large in sizes. Mongoose have sharp little teeth, and they're part of the Herpestidae family. So they're something completely different. They're not called rodents. They're called herpestids. So no, they're not related to, relief and triumph at the fact that there's a mongoose in the road. Here we go. So no, Carter, they are not closely related to... Carter, where are you from? Because I don't know where you're from, but if you are from, perhaps if you're from the North America somewhere, or if you're from Europe, you'll probably have heard of ferrets or weasels. Now, they're not quite closely related to mongoose, but they do come closer than some kind of rodent, like a rat or a mouse. So a weasel or a polecat or an ermine, they're not in the same family, but they're more closely related. And our mongoose are basically the same thing. They do essentially the same thing here in South Africa. Okay. Mongoose have vanished. The search for shadow continues. Okay, mongoose is back in the road, and we do have some questions on mongoose, so let's try for a few minutes longer with them before they disappear. Aaron, you want to know which species of mongoose will adapt best to a wide variety of different conditions? Good question. I'm going to go ahead and say slender mongoose. They have a very wide range, at least here in South Africa. They have a very wide range, whereas things like yellow mongoose you don't see in the Lowveld, you don't see meerkat in the Lowveld, which are in the same family, even if they're not actually a mongoose. Dwarf mongoose, they're also very adaptable. They're also quite good with arid conditions, but they're outcompeted in the more arid areas, and they're not as good as something like a meerkat or a yellow mongoose. So I'm going to go ahead and say slender, because almost everywhere that I've been in South Africa, I've seen a slender mongoose. Miller's mongoose, no. Water mongoose, banded. Banded are quite high up there. I'm still going to go slender. And their solitary nature means that they only have to look after themselves. Right, we're going to go back to the water to see whether or not Shadow has come down to have a drink. Tristan's had a similar idea, and he's found a dinosaur of the water holes.
Well, we do have a dinosaur. We have Vlad the Impaler cruising along the edge of Chitwa Dam, looking out for any signs of food. And unfortunately for him, so far he hasn't had too much success. He's just been kind of cruising along the bank. The Egyptian geese family was quite close, but they spotted him, and there was much commotion. But now the Egyptian goose family is quite far away, and unfortunately for Vlad, there's no Egyptian goose afternoon tea for him. So no food. Now I'm just trying to see where he's actually going, because he's coming quite close to the edge of the bank, and very seldom that the crocs actually spend time in this sort of section of Chitwa Dam. We are on a flooded section now, so a few years ago there wouldn't have been water here, and if you came in the drought there most definitely wasn't water. And so I don't know if he's just coming up there just to get a bit of sunshine on his back, or her back should I say, to be able to then warm up and get that sort of body a little bit more active. I would imagine that the water is starting to get quite cold, even though it's a very large body of water. The nights are getting very, very chilly, and so the water must cool down quite a bit during the night. And so these crocodiles will spend a vast majority of their day out trying to get that body and that metabolism working so that they can actually be able to be active and hunt what they need to hunt. Now in this particular dam, most of what they hunt is fish. You'll find that he goes after fish pretty much most days, and I remember fondly when I was working at Chitwa, sitting on the deck, and when we had our afternoon tea, we used to watch him come to the corner right up against where the deck is, and he used to use his body and push towards a sort of in-cut in the edge of the water hole or the dam, and he would sort of herd fish into that little section, and then as he would go closer and closer and closer, he would get too shallow for the fish, and the fish would then try to jump over the crocodile, and then he would just latch out and grab one after another, and it used to entertain guests for long periods of time. And sometimes we'd normally leave for game drive at say 3:30, and you'd only end up leaving off 4:15 because you'd watch this crocodile hunting fish after fish. It was really quite interesting. And then the fish eagle would come in, and he would wait in case the crocodile missed something and grab every now and then. So it was quite a cool sort of scenario to watch, and it played out most days. And by catching, 1 or 2 fish a day, this crocodile would sustain itself until it was able to get those big meals and something more sort of sustainable, like a antelope of some sort. And I was telling Ferg, I actually have seen one of these crocs pull down a fully grown male nyala, like the one that James was busy stalking, and that floated around in the dam for a few days until it was consumed. So they are pretty efficient hunters when they want to be. But Chitwa Dam has got to be one of the most beautiful places, and other than the crocodiles, and it's just such a pretty view that we have. Multiple different species of antelope and birds that all hang around. There's a fish eagle sitting in the tree there above the waterbuck. So there we go. So there's our fish eagle just sitting up there. Now Sheila, you asking how do crocodiles mate? Well, crocodiles will mate in the water, and it's pretty much the same as most animals. The male will obviously fertilize the female. She'll then lay eggs. And you're wondering if this is mating season for the crocodiles. Well, yes, it should be now. Actually, we're approaching mating season. They will lay their eggs normally around October, so that's normally when you start to see the eggs, so sort of September, October, and so they will be mating in the next month or so. But this is a massive crocodile. It's amazing also how easily they're able to move. You kind of can't see any tail moving. There's just a little tip wagging, but the amount of distance they cover as quick as they do is pretty amazing to watch. They really are so well designed for what they actually have to do and how they live. It's almost quite creepy just watching it sort of sailing through the water, and you can see it's going against the current, and underwater it goes. So, Johnny, you're wondering if crocodiles eat humans. Well, yes, you probably find that crocodiles eat more humans than we actually know about. The thing about crocodiles is that they occur in most of Africa's major waterways. So in all the big rivers of Africa, you'll find crocodiles. And unfortunately, what happens with crocodiles is that they spend a lot of time on the banks, and they are very, very, very clever animals. They'll watch what goes on, and they'll watch people coming back and forth to swim or to wash clothes or to fish, and they kind of keep an eye out on what's going on. And as soon as there is an opportunity, they'll then grab somebody, and often what happens is that person gets taken underwater, consumed, or hidden into a sort of underneath in the tree where it will rot before the crocodile can feed on it, and actually no trace of that person is found. And in these rural communities and parts of Africa, you probably find a lot of the time they're not reported that there's somebody that has been killed, and so we actually don't have a really strong estimate of how many are taken by crocodiles, but I can tell you there are a lot of people that are killed by crocodiles every year in parts of Africa, particularly along the Zambezi rivers, the Congo Basin, even some of the rivers in South Africa. There was recently a hunter that was taken by a crocodile up on the Limpopo River, which is the northernmost river of the Kruger National Park. So he was killed when he went down to the water's edge with his dogs, and so they definitely do. Now, unfortunately, our crocodile is underwater. As we saw, it was disappearing below the surface and has gone under, and so we can't see where he's gone now. Hopefully he'll pop out again somewhere and Vlad will make an appearance, but for now underwater, and we could be waiting 2 hours because sometimes crocodiles can hold their breath for as long as 2 hours. So if it's decided to stay under for a long period of time, unfortunately we may not see him again, which is a shame. It was nice just to have him out and about. But talking about big males, although here he is, he's just popped up in front of us. There you go, Ferg. Right in front of the car here, he's just popped up, cruising along the banks, and I think he's just scouting about, trying to see if he can't see any sort of vulnerable animal, so an Egyptian goose that maybe he's not watching, or any sort of species that might be close to the water's edge that he can then get. There we go. Now it's amazing that he went down. He probably went down, I would say, maybe 50 meters away from where we are. There goes a fish eagle across the water as well. Isn't that beautiful? It's amazing to watch fish eagles. Oh, I think that fish eagle just attacked some of the Egyptian geese by the looks of it. You see, they're all fighting. Unfortunately, the bank's in the way, so I'm not going to be able to get there. But here comes another fish eagle to weigh in. There goes... I wanted to grab anything, Ferg. I don't think so. Let's see what happens here. Oh, that's wonderful camera work. Well done, Ferg. Isn't that beautiful? We'll get back to our crocodile now, but that's just so epic. Well done, Fergus. That is very, very cool. That was amazing camera work. Can't tell you actually how difficult it is to track a bird like that when you're looking through a tiny little viewfinder. So that was amazing work. Now, sorry, you were feeding me a question, Chantal, and I got completely distracted by our fish eagle. So if you can just repeat it again about our crocodile. It's disappeared again, the crocodile. He's gone under somewhere. I'm sure he'll pop up again. I'll keep an eye out for him. So, Laurie, the crocs will pull their food down to underneath the water surface, maybe not to the bottom itself, but they'll find somewhere where there's a fallen over tree or some sort of branch or rocky area that they can sort of shove that carcass in and wait for the carcass to break down. And the reason why is because a crocodile's jaws are designed in a way that they close with immense power. So when the crocodile's jaws close, it's probably it is the most powerful jaw power in the world, and it's got the most pressure per square inch, and it will clamp down on that individual. It then drags it in, but it doesn't have the ability to actually chew, and the teeth that they have are all gripping teeth. There's no sort of triangular teeth like the cats will have to be able to chew off and slice off chunks of meat, and so what you end up with is a situation where they can't actually break off big pieces, and so they have to put it underwater and wait for that meat to soften and rot a little bit, and then they'll start to feed on it. If it's a small prey animal, so something for a big crocodile like this, like an impala, would be easily eatable straight away. You'll find that they'll just take it and throw it around, and that will be able to break the carcass up, and they will be able to feed off it. But something larger like a wildebeest or maybe something like a nyala, they have to wait for it to soften a little bit before they're able to tear off big chunks and eat it. But isn't that fish eagle the most beautiful thing in that afternoon light? Like I say, we get so spoiled when we come to Chitwa Dam. There's just so much life around us, and you just sit here, and as you sit, all these little things start coming out, and you see birds and animals start coming down for water. And being here at this time of the day is probably one of the best times to be here. I see our crocodile's back out again, Fergie's just in front of us, and you just can see his head poking out. So Vlad is right next to the bank. Now you can imagine, maybe he's watching these Egyptian geese that are all filter feeding on the edge here. So there's quite a number of Egyptian geese lined up along the edge of this sort of the dam wall. And so if they come a little bit closer and he just drops under, he could then potentially hunt one of those. And I have seen the crocodiles of Chitwa Dam eat Egyptian geese numerous times. So they're not adverse to going after a bit of bird meat. And so you'll find if Egyptian goose gets a little bit close, it's going to have a little bit of a problem. But isn't that amazing? And look at the beautiful light on that crocodile. If it opens its eyes, they've got the most electric colored eyes. It's this sort of deep greens and yellows. Really is very, very beautiful when they do open their eyes, but it seems that his eye is closed at this stage. So, yes, there is quite a few differences between crocodiles and alligators. Here in Africa, we don't have any alligators. Well, none that are actually native to the African continent. It's all find that alligators are more in the Americas than here, so all of ours are crocodiles. And in terms of sort of structure, you'll find that the crocodile has a very slender, pointed, triangular head, whereas an alligator has a very rounded snout and almost kind of comes down in a rectangular shape. The crocodile will also have teeth that are exposed, so when it's got its mouth closed, its teeth lie on the outside of its mouth, whereas a alligator with that wider mouth, the teeth are all inside and you actually don't see the teeth when it's lying with its mouth closed. So those are some of the sort of basic ways to identify the two, and probably the easiest way. The crocodiles, the Nile crocodile, can get as big or bigger than the alligator can, and if you get saltwater crocodiles, then those can get even bigger. So they are slightly bigger than the alligators, but it's more that the structure of the head that is easy to then tell them apart. So if you see a sort of long snout, that's generally a crocodile, and alligators, the very rounded, sort of blunted nose that you see with them. But now, I can't unfortunately go any closer because I'm pretty sure if I had to drive any further or start the car, this crocodile is going to go underwater, which I don't really want. But it would have been so cool to be close enough that we could have seen its eye looking at us. I can't see nicely if the eye is actually open. It might be, it's just a very odd angle that we're at the moment. We can't really see too much of the detail. We just got the back view of his head and his little snout poking out of the water itself. Maybe we should try. What do you think, Ferg? Should we try? Let's try and see. Maybe we're going to be able to get a little eye view of this crocodile as we kind of go forward. I'm hoping he's not going to go under. Let's see. So far, so good. Although I see the snout is going under a little bit. I'm going to just try and pull a little bit further. Are we good? Sorry. Yeah, there we go. I've gone forward now. It's just popped his head under, but maybe he'll pop back up again. We're going to just try and see if we can't wait him out, because it will be so cool if we can get, we're very close at this stage. We're probably not even 10 meters away, so it'll be amazing if we can get that head in shot. Now, Natalie, you're wondering how fast the crocodiles can swim. Well, when their tail is going very, very quickly, they can cover distance or get quite a sort of high speed. And I'm not sure the exact figure, but it seems, in my mind, I seem to keep thinking around 40 kilometers an hour. I might be wrong, but maybe somebody else out there can help us and hashtag Safari Live, and you can let me know if maybe you have an exact figure for us. But I think it's somewhere around 40 kilometers an hour in water, which is pretty amazing to do. And I remember watching a situation where there was a crocodile in the Sabi River in the south of the Sabi Sands, and wild dogs had chased a bushbuck into the river. And as this bushbuck was now trying to swim across this river to save its life from these marauding predators on the bank, it kind of made a big splash, and from upriver, this crocodile just came flying down the river, and the speed at which it arrived towards that bushbuck was phenomenal. It is amazing how fast they move. There's this big bow wave that comes in front of them, and hopefully you guys are going to see some of this in action when you go up to the Mara and we've got those crossings happening. You'll find the crocodiles will come swimming in behind the wildebeest or the gazelle and grab them, and it's all very, very, very exciting. So hopefully you'll get a sort of taste of how fast these crocodiles can move. And here you can see our big sort of population of Egyptian geese that we have in this area. There's lots and lots and lots of Egyptian geese at Chitwa Dam, and it's because it's the perfect place for them. There's this blue-green algae that you can see on the corner of the dam there that they filter feed through, and they're able to gain nutrients from that. It's also a big water source, which means that there's more than enough space for everybody. Right, so while we sort of watch and enjoy the sights of Chitwa and the sounds that are going on, let's go across to James, who's got a rather spiky knotweed.
We have got very nice knotweeds. We're in a field of knotweeds here in the great drainage line or river that feeds the Djuma Dam. And what we're looking at there is a very excited looking shield bug that has found this great utopia of knotweed plants. Now, we also had the most gorgeous crimson bug with an extremely long ovipositor, but it has now disappeared, and unfortunately Craig is positioned in such a way that he cannot move or the signal will disappear. You right there, Craig? So I'm just going to get into a position where I can examine this fellow properly. You can see he's moving quite suspiciously. He knows that something's up. Hello? No, he's not a shield bug. He's another kind of bug. I'm not sure what kind of bug. As I lie here, there are some very angry starlings not too far from here. We'll go and see what they're shouting at just now. And this chap should be feeding, but I think he's just having a rest. Now, most of the knotweeds from around here have long since disappeared. But because we're in a river system, there's a lot of water underground here, and so that's why they're around. I'm going to just stand up because those alarming are getting closer and closer. We're going to carry.
Oh dear, it seems as though poor James, I think, was... Oh, wait, don't fly. James was caught out in mid-sentence. We apologise for that. But we've got something pretty to show you instead, in the form of a lilac-breasted roller in the sun. And it really, in terms of the bird species that we get out here, this is probably one of the most colourful. But true to the standard pattern of birds out here, it's got the ugliest call in the world. All of the nondescript birds sing beautifully. The little robins, the warblers, those sorts of birds. And this particular beautiful bird you would think would sort of go, you know, have some kind of beautiful, magical, almost Disney-like lyrical song. What it actually has is it goes, rah, rah. So it really isn't a pretty sound at all. I'd give you a literal reading in my bird book, but I forgot to bring my bird book, so that's not very helpful. But not a pretty call, but a very pretty bird. Now, supposedly the unofficial bird of Botswana, and actually in most local cultures a symbol of peace. Now, of course, Western cultures always go for the doves as a symbol of peace, and you release doves at weddings for some reason, and I don't know the full details behind it. But out here in Africa, in the southern parts of Africa, the dove is actually more a symbol of conflict than it is of peace, because of the way that males fight over females, and the symbol of peace is more the lilac-breasted roller. I say the unofficial bird of Botswana because their official national bird is a western cattle egret, and apparently most Botswanians aren't terribly chuffed with that particular choice. Off it goes. It's searching for something. It's gone back to its perch. Did it catch something? I think it did. Gulped down in one bite. Must have been some kind of flying insect. Sure, that was quick. The eyesight of these birds is so much better than that of a human. They see far faster in terms of frames per second than we do, or they process that information faster, which allows them to be able to do things like swoop through the air and gather up an insect. I mean, I surprised myself when I managed to kill a mosquito, let alone being able to soar through the air and grab something out of it. Yesterday I grabbed a mosquito and got such a surprise that I opened my hand and let it go, and then felt like the Karate Kid. I was very impressed with myself. Let's see if it goes again. It's obviously a perfect perch for this particular bird. On a dead tree, it's got a good view of the surrounding areas. And then every now and again it'll swoop forward and grab something. Very pretty, very obliging. Let's see if it'll come back. No, it won't. It's gone. And so shall we be. You feeling okay, Rusty? Rusty's having a Sunday. She doesn't want to start straight away. Rusty's the vehicle, by the way. Welcome to George, who would like to know, hello George, you would like to know what type of food does this beautiful bird eat? The same type of food that this less beautiful but still entertaining bird likes to eat. Never mind, it's gone. Insects. Insects form the base of its diet. It will catch things like butterflies, it will catch things like even potentially bees or wasps, provided it can get a good grip away from the sting, and then it will scrape scrape the insect that it's caught on a branch and remove the sting before swallowing it. Caterpillars, any kind of an insect will fall victim or fall foul of a lilac-breasted roller. And the reason that they're called rollers, there's another one there since we're answering a question on it. Oh, can you see it there, Seb? It's on the left part of the marula there. There we go, and there we go. It's basically almost in the center of your frame. Beautiful. It's called a roller because during the mating displays, or even actually when threatening other bird species, which they do quite a bit, the male will do a flight display where it rolls through the air. It kind of dives from one side to the other. It keeps its wings open, but it just looks like it's almost completely out of control. And that apparently is very intimidating if you're another male roller, and very attractive if you're a female roller. And both male and female look exactly the same. The male might be slightly more vibrant, but there's not much of a difference between the two of them. And one of the only roller species, apart from the purple roller, that actually sticks around in this area during this time of year. Actually everywhere. I keep seeing flashes of blue. I want to show you what this hornbill's doing because it's interesting. I'm just hoping it doesn't fly away while we try and get to it. Whoa! Seb's still on. Well done. That was a bigger bump than I thought. Oh, the poor cameraman put up with so much from us. One day they'll have their revenge, if we ever let them drive. What are you after? Please don't fly away. I think it's after something in that dead tree. Or is it, I think it's after, is it breaking open the termite diggings? Not diggings, sorry, the termite coverings. It is too. Yes. It is. That stuff that Herbie made me eat. I'm sorry, we just got dive bombed by a roller. I can't believe that. That was so random. Okay. That stuff that Herbie made me eat on the bushwalk the other day, and I was quite convinced. No, I wasn't convinced. I thought that Herbie was having me on. I figured if you were going to play a trick on someone, that'd be a pretty funny one to do. But it turns out he wasn't. He was absolutely correct. Apparently this is a delicacy. The sort of the sandy mixture of sand, saliva, and termite feces. Not feces, really. Excrement that they use to cover the tree that they're working on. And basically it's very clever because it allows them to start to consume the wood, to break it down. There you can see him actually actively catching the termites. It allows them to do so in the cover of the shade. So they create these tunnels in this covering, and then they can work all day, where they wouldn't be able to do that if that was in the heat of the sun. And this hornbill is taking full advantage of that. It's actually smashing it open with its beak, and then grabbing at the termites that are inside there. That's cool. And you can see, obviously it's got a massive blind spot in the front of its face, so it's got to turn its head to actually get an idea of where the termites are. It's quite a feat of coordination to grab something, because that's a microtermes. Well, those are microtermes that it's busy eating. So it's got to grab something small right at the end of that long bill and then throw it backwards into its mouth. I wonder if they ever miss. You know, like when you throw a grape up or something and try and catch it in your mouth? I wonder if they ever miss completely. Probably not, because they have to eat like that all the time, whereas apparently when I do it, it's frowned upon in polite company. It's obviously found itself a real feast there. Cool. Gulping them down. That's something that you don't see lilac-breasted rollers doing, George. You don't really see them eating termites like that. The only time you will see them eating termites is when it is breeding time for the termites. So when you get the reproductive alates, the winged alates that explode out. And that generally happens during or just after the rains of summer. And speaking of creatures that usually come out of after the rains, I think James has found one.
I have indeed, and it's an enormous one, and it's just next to the Galago pan. This is a huge tortoise for this area. They do get regularly sort of bigger than this in the Eastern Cape region, but not here. This is as big as they get here. And this tortoise could easily be over 100 years old. Imagine the stories he could tell. Isn't he fantastic? And I think what he's done, he'll be, going through the process of estivation, but he's obviously got a bit thirsty. He obviously has his estivation spot somewhere close by here, and he pops down to have a drink every so often. Oh, he's magnificent. This is a leopard tortoise. You can see why he's called a leopard tortoise. Look at him breathing there. What a fascinating and magnificent creature he is. Now, when I say he's 100 years old, I mean I'm guessing because he's so very big. They are potentially able to live for at least that long. But there was some confusion, or I was confused at one stage. I thought maybe you could age them by counting the rings that there are around the scoots. Now, I don't know if you can see those rings. Can you see them there, Craig? The scoots. The scoots are the little sort of individual pieces that make up the shell. He's just got a little bit of a fright, so he stuck his head back into his shell. Now, in actual fact, you can't age a tortoise like that. They do show periods of prolonged growth and periods of prolonged lack of growth, depending on the resources that there are available. And so, because he's such a big fella, I don't mind touching the top of his shell. And so you can tell, basically, when there were good years and when there were bad years from the width of the rings. And, I don't know, let's have a look. This guy's shown some pretty consistent growth. If you look at these ones here, I would say that that wide ridge there, can you see the one that I'm tracing my hand along? Yeah. That looks like a pretty good year to me. And if you look at the one over here, that looks like a pretty poor year. There are two or three pretty poor years and one really good year between the scoots there. But how old he is, well, that's just very difficult to say. And of course, this is sort of living tissue, if you like, and he's growing in amongst the scoots. So that top part there is not going to grow. The top parts of the scoots will not grow. But each ring obviously grows year on year or season on season, depending on the conditions. And what's so clever about it, I think, is that it's designed in such a way that the whole shell can grow at the same time. So although it's growing from lots of different points, because it would be very difficult to make a shape like this grow uniformly, or a hard shape like this grow uniformly, it grows in just the right geometrical pattern for the entire thing to expand as one. Now that might not sound enormously impressive to you. If you think of a balloon, for example, it just blows up and it's very easy. You try and make a shape like this and then decide which pieces of it you would have to make bigger in order to make it uniformly larger at the same time, and you will find it extremely difficult. I'm trying to think of an example. It's quite difficult actually, but it's extremely difficult, and nature has come up with a solution to it by giving this tortoise growth points in all the right geometrical places. And you can see, I think, that the tops of the tortoise are raised like that. You can see they're quite raised, they're quite 3D. And I think the reason for that is that because he's got so big, I think that they're now growing out of shape. Oh, he's a fantastic fellow, aren't you? Yes. What is your name? Do you have a name? Obviously, you would be Mr. So-and-so, clearly. We wouldn't dare call you someone as eminent or aged as you by your first name. Yes. Come on, put your head out. There you are. That's it. Hello, Reese. You're in Scotland and you want to know how thick I think the shell is on the tortoise. Well, I can tell you that the bottom, which is called the plastron, from where I'm looking now, is an inch thick in places. It's probably a little bit thinner towards the belly, but it's an inch thick just underneath his chin. And I would say that the top of the shell here is probably about the same. Yeah, no, that's the best place for Craig to be. Look at his little head coming out. I don't mean to use the term little in a derogatory fashion with an eminent animal like this, an eminent and deeply aged resident of this wilderness. But imagine being able to unpick his memory and being able to see what he saw in the tiny little area that he's been in a time lapse of his experiences in this area and the changes in the vegetation, the animals. He would have been here before there was a camp anywhere near here, before human beings lived here in large numbers. Must have been fascinating. And for him to have survived this long is quite a skill. Well done, you. Yes. Are you going to a termite mound? I think you probably are. I think he's going to go just into the long grass there. He's had his drink, and there he's going to rest. Come on, off you go. Terry, you want me to demonstrate a tortoise vocalization? I mean, I would ask this fellow to do it, but he's a little bit eminent for me to get him to do such childish things, so I will try. I don't know if you've ever heard you've obviously heard a tortoise vocalization. That's why you want me to give it to you. Normally they call when they are mating, and they go, I'm not going to make it. It's too embarrassing. They make very impassioned grunts, if you like, and it just looks so incongruous, of course, because they're so awkward about their movements, and so when they start making these loud grunting noises in the moment critique, it is just very amusing. But otherwise they don't make much noise. He will make a hissing sound. If I get too close to him, he'd make a hiss, little bit like a snake. There he goes. And I always think that their front legs are very strangely designed. It's almost like they've been fitted without too much thought. But clearly they haven't. Clearly they work very well. This is fantastic. Look at his back legs. They're so ancient. They look almost like clawed elephant legs or dinosaur legs. Now, Monique, you're in London, of course, and you say, what are the scales on his legs that look like scales? They're scales. His skin is very scaled, and some of those scales are modified to form bony edges, and those bony edges would help him to defend himself were he to be attacked by some sort of predator. And I suppose the thing that would love to get hold of this tortoise more than anything else would be an enormous turkey-like ground hornbill. But I think even a tortoise this size, or a tortoise this size, would probably be too much for a ground hornbill to get hold of. He is very, very cool. Let's move along with him. All right, we'll leave this fellow to himself. He's clearly a little bit nervous of us. He's going off that way, and perhaps we'll see him back here at the water at some stage. Let's head across to Jamie and find out what she has in store for you for the rest of this very marvellous Sunday afternoon.
I've got something very exciting in store for you for this marvellous Sunday afternoon, apart from when I'm magically going to find Shadow, which is going to happen, I'm now determined. Well, I did have something marvellous in store for you. There's a family of guinea fowl, but the family of guinea fowl have disappeared into the long grass and have now almost completely... Oh wait, there's one loser who's left behind. Shame, I'm not calling him a loser, seriously. He looked so alone. Hold on. I'll try and find them for you. I want to show you what a juvenile guinea fowl looks like. It doesn't look like that though. Those are antelope. I might not have seen many animals recently, but I'm relatively certain, as rusty as I may have got, that these are antelope and not guinea fowl. So where on earth did the guinea fowl go? Oh, you horrible birds. Can you hear them? That's where she is. I've been desperately trying to find out where Tiani is on the Game Drive radio. She's on Simbambili.